we've had Jaisy share. Yeah, so we have taken the permission of Jaisy to record this session, and you will be able to also see this session later in YouTube and also shared in various other forums in LinkedIn. So we've had the honor of having Jaisy share with us and train us earlier as well. And it's always been a pleasure to have her because we learn so much from her for all the different techniques. And she's been in this industry for almost 30 years now. And in fact, when I joined this industry 20 years ago, she was already leading the qualitative research in TNS, which is now Kantar in back in Bombay. And that's how I know her. 20 years ago, I met her. And so that's basically brief introduction, and she's been in qualitative, behavioral, and cultural expertise. That's her expertise, and she's also into semiotics. That's another part of it, which she's also shared another session for that topic. Um, Over to you, JC, uh, to train us, all of us, in projective techniques. I think this is very useful for qualitative researchers, especially UX researchers and designers, because I know that, which is what is interesting, is that I have met a lot of UX researchers, and a lot of UX researchers are actually UX designers or from another field. And a lot of times what happens is when they join the industry, they do not really join the industry into a research agency, not through a research agency. A lot of times they are joining the industry as part of a company, a lot of times a smaller company or a bigger company, and they are the only researcher. And hence they do not get the kind of training which a lot of which a lot of others do. People coming from market research may get that kind of training because they are joining an agency which is much bigger, and there are many more people, seniors who are training them. So it's very, very useful for UX researchers, I think, this training, because they will learn all the different ways of asking and the techniques of asking questions, not just asking a question just in a simple way. So so Jaisy, as I said, she's been almost, I think, 30 years in qualitative research, and she has been in working in different categories: food, automobiles, personal care, and also now in e-commerce. And she's presented papers almost in every other industry events. So yeah, over to you, Jaisy. Please take over and share with us. Yeah.
Thanks, Achita. Thanks, Achita. Thank you for your introduction. Thank you, and this opportunity to speak today. Good afternoon, everyone. And I'm going to be talking about projective techniques, but projective techniques in isolation is not what we do. Therefore, I'm going to go a little wider and give you a context around how it's used and what else can you use, because this is more about basic in qualitative. So to get a sense of what are the different techniques you can use in qualitative. I'm also going to try and be a little slower because it's getting translated in Chinese. So I'm going to try and consciously be a little slower in speech. So I have two analogies about qual research. So one is that qualitative research is about focusing on your customer, on the other person. So the focus is not on you, the focus is on someone else. Therefore, we build this whole, technique of understanding where others are, seeing what their situation is, over time building empathy, compassion, and all of that. So I always feel a true qual research evolves to be a better person. And why is that important for you? Because you don't do qualitative research at one point. You can be following these techniques in any part of your life. It could be when you're with your boss, when you're giving an interview. It could be just interacting with anyone. And what you learn here is also transferred to in those situations. So that's one. And the second analogy I have for qual research is like being a detective. You go focused, you're looking for specific cues, just like how a detective goes looking for cues, and then they put it all together and then come up with the insight or the murderer, or so I always see myself as Sherlock Holmes. So I have these analogies covered in the presentation today. So just to give you a sense of how we borrow from other disciplines. Okay, so today we'll talk about system one and system two, because that's the basis of responses that we get from customers. Then what are the skills required for observation, the many secrets to a good interaction with customer, and then projective techniques, because you use projective techniques appropriately depending on what your objective is, and along with other techniques. So I'm giving you an entire context of this. So let's start with system one and system two. System one is the intuitive part, where you kind of know things without too much effort, without too much introspection. It's your gut feel. It's nonverbal. It's often emotionally charged. You get a feeling that something works or something is not right. It happens in everyday situations, right? Snap judgments, gut feeling, instinct. And when you ask a customer a specific response, a lot of times they give you this kind of answers, which are intuitive, which are emotional, and which comes from their system one. And system two is when it is very logical, it is carefully thought. It takes a little longer time. It's deliberate. It's kind of processing, like customer journeys. You get a careful observation of what the customer is thinking in their mind, and therefore you get the responses like that. So all our responses are either system one or system two. And Daniel Kahneman has written a whole book on it, pretty elaborate and complex, but we are just touching upon it. So why did I bring it here? Because projective techniques come from a system one response. It is instant, it is emotional, it is intuitive, because you're not questioning here. You're trying to get responses through another medium. It could be a picture, it could be a personification. So therefore, it's a system one response. Whereas when you're observing and interviewing a customer, the interview becomes a very system two, where he's processing his own thoughts. Sometimes a customer is sharp enough to kind of plan his responses in a way that fits his belief system, right? So he's thinking about what to say and then telling you. So both these we use both of these techniques in different situations depending on our objectives. So we'll first look at observation, because that's a basic in qualitative research. And it's not just about observation, it's also the interview that follows. So you're observing and asking questions. Okay? And why do we observe? So observation is a very holistic technique. Even if you're just going to do an interview, you first observe, right? You understand where the customer is operating from. Let's say you're observing them at home, seeing them in their natural environment, in their real life context, because a lot of interviews are done in customers' home, especially pre-COVID. Of course, now we are going back to that, but a lot of it is done online also. But online, we do ask them to take us through their home and tell us their situation around them. How does their home look? What do they like? What are the tension points within the home? So we try and understand the customer in their natural environment. And we've done a lot of these very specific observation, like exploring their wardrobe, or looking at their kitchen, how they use equipments, or looking at them washing hair, not bathing of course, but washing hair, whatever is permissible, we do observe them. And why do we do this? Because that is trying to walk in the shoes of the other person. We know what are the items around them that drive their behavior, then there's also always a gap between what they're saying and what they're doing. And this could be an example where someone is talking about how well dressed they are and how perfect they are in terms of their appearance, but when you see their wardrobe, it could be a complete mess. And there's a reason for it. She has a reason for it. Or it's about trying to get something, a new idea, then therefore you do observation to understand customers in their in their natural environment. I have put in a lot of pictures, videos, also some of them from our own studies, and so just to give you a sense of real how we actually use it. So this is also basis the recent study we did with Lazada on fashion and how they actually manage their wardrobes and what kind of trends they follow. So this is one part of that. So it's just one part where we're showing you how they actually work out their wardrobes, and therefore what does it imply in terms of trends and their behavior. So while we all feel that observation is very easy to do, we know that we don't actually realize that we miss out a lot of things while we are observing. So we assume that we are observing carefully, but there's a lot that we can miss. So I just want to point out that, the testing the power of observation and play. The sound is not all that clear, but it gets better as it goes. So let me play this video. You can see the screen.
No, not
yet, Jaisy. It's still
not
loading.
yet. Yeah, still loading, I guess.
Oh,
Maybe you want to share, yeah, again.
yeah, I'm doing that. Okay, now
it's showing. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, excuse me real quick. Hey, I just got the BYU app. Do you know how to get to like the staff directory by chance?
Use that.
Just watch, even
Yeah,
if you
did you
don't
get
hear, it's fine.
the directory?
Let me look on mine.
Okay.
What's up, guys? Robbie P here, and we're here in the very cold and snowy weather today, and we're going to be testing students' power of observation. Hey, excuse me real quick. Hey, do you know how to work this BYU app? Do you know how to get...
Sorry about that. Do you know how to get to the directory?
I don't actually.
Hey, excuse me real quick. Hey, do you know how to work this app? I just got it. Do you know how to get to the staff? I originally asked you the question. The box came around and we switched. We switched.
Yeah.
You could sign it and show the camera.
Hey, do you think you could take a picture of us really quick, please? Thank you so much. Well, oh, I hate that.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
So this is actually a magic trick to kind of show how sometimes things aren't always as they appear, and if you're not really paying attention, some things can switch right before your eyes. Actually, what happened was I approached you and asked you to take a picture of us two, and then I switched with this girl, and I took a picture of her. And do you know how to like get to like the staff? Oh, sorry.
Have you seen the directory app? Can I ask you a question? So, I'm actually trying to do this. I just got this BYU app. Have you used it before?
I have no idea.
You haven't used it before? I'll just keep looking, dude. Hey, thanks. Okay. Oh, sorry.
Alright, so do you know where the app is, where the directory is?
So it was a psychological experiment. Behind the box, Robin, he actually started talking to you, and then we swapped. Did you notice?
I didn't even catch that.
Cool. So yeah, it's just testing the powers of observation.
Do you know how to get to the staff directory by chance? I just got in there. I have sorry.
Cheers, guys.
So yeah, I've been looking through the whole app, and I just can't find it anywhere.
We just filmed a psychological experiment on you.
Yes.
You did notice?
I noticed that there was a camera, and that was kind of an odd question asked for any person, so I figured someone.
Right, exactly. But yeah, we're
Did you
just.
notice a switch?
Switch between what?
Oh, there you go. Hey, excuse me real quick. Hey, I got this view on you app. Do you know how to get to the?
Okay. Basically, they kept switching people while they passed the TV box, and people didn't notice that the person they were talking to actually switched. So this was an actual live test that they did in the streets of Denmark or Norway, or one of those places, and they realized that very few people actually noticed that the person they were talking to is not the person they were talking to later after the TV box went past them. So they didn't notice that, and they didn't even realize. So that's how our observation goes on a general key. But yes, when we want to do something, our observations do heighten, but that's as far as how the observation goes. So observation can vary in range, time, and depth, depending on your requirements. So it could be observation to understand a whole process, like a customer journey in terms of, let's say, application of makeup on a woman's face, or it could be to understand the context. So context is understanding about not just the way she does the makeup, why she does the makeup, what does she have, what are the limitations she works with, all the different elements that contribute to her life, and therefore how she does her makeup. It could be a prolonged involvement with the customer on the vertical axis, or it could be very task-based. So you can choose what kind of observation you do depending on what your objectives are. And there are 4 types. There's customer immersion, there's customer moment, and these are all, as the word implies, customer glimpses, customer vision. So each one as is required. So in customer glimpses, you are very often getting a customer glimpse through themselves. We're asking them to work on a diary so that they can, fill up specific questions that we are asking. It could be about hair care, it could be about the phone calls they make, whatever the queries that you want to ask. So that's about customer glimpses, where the customer is providing you the data. And when we did the study to, understand people's fashion behavior, sportswear is a huge trend now. We all know that. And there's a lot of people spending a lot of time with sportswear and, trying to get the best clothes that fit them, that, that state who they are and all of that. So we asked customers to give us their sportswear wardrobe, and this is what we got in our recent studies. And like I said, all of this happens along with other queries that we have, that we do. So sportswear is only one of them. So here is the So besides getting information on brands, where they shop, all of that, we also got to get a sense of how they use it, how they store it, which are the trends that are picking up. So we analyze a lot of stuff from the glimpses or the pictures that the customers provide us. So that was on customer glimpses. And this is about customer moments. Moments is when you want to see someone, play a game or maybe cook something, watch them how they use a cooker or a oven, or it could be used for uh, any of those products. So here it was used for a gaming, or we typically use it to see how people collect rewards on the shopping app, or it could be on how they understand, what is happening with the vouchers or the games, or what they're using on the apps. So we get a sense of how they actually use it, how they interact with each of those functions within the app. So here is I'll show you some of those examples. So in customer moment, what we are looking at is the functional part of it and the emotional. So while they operate the game or operate the app, you also get to know on how easy or difficult it is for them to use, and also the extent to which they enjoy, or the extent to which they identify with the character. So here it was on how they actually use a fridge. So that's a customer moment. Or it could be on how a customer uses, a specific point creditation, or, a reward program. How do they actually use it? So before purchase, during purchase, post purchase. How do they actually understand the benefits that come with these rewards? So you actually watch them use the function in the app and gauge, to what extent is it easy for them, to what extent is it difficult, do they actually enjoy the process of searching and finding the reward program, and what are the frustrations at different points. So all of these are got through when you're observing them at a specific task. Or it could be about testing designs. Does a pop-up work or does it not work? Does it work in a small size, in a big size? Where does it lead you? To which page does it lead you? So, so there are so many different things you can, watch them and understand how they do it. So here is an actual case of how they are, how the moderator is asking the respondent to share her screen and actually watch her doing this whole uploading the image part of it, or using any particular function. It can be used for any kind of testing. So let me show you this video on that.
So the whole time, we want you to share your screen, and then I will ask you to use the demo account. It's just like a test account to protect your privacy as well if you don't want to share your other accounts. So it's mandatory, the photo. Just any photo can you use a sample, even if it's not an actual product, even if it's not related. Okay. There you go. There. Okay, let's now add the identity, ID, bank information. There. ID. Yeah, just a sample. Any will do. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So that was on customer moments. And in customer immersions, we are trying to immerse ourselves in the customer's situation. So which means we are there for a longer time. We are trying to understand for a longer duration, like camera plays for a day, or you meet the customer for 4 days, for a longer time, because we want to see the, the part of customer's life that influence the product usage or the behavior of the customer. So it's basically a longer interview. And customer vision is even longer. So it is about trying to understand not just the customer with the product, but his goals, his ambition, his lifestyle, his personality, and understand the person behind who the customer is. So vision is about getting a complete picture of the customer in every part of it, and therefore define how he interacts with the product or the category. So these were the different types of observation. And typically when we are observing or talking to customers, what we call are different secrets or, trying to unravel different psychodynamics that actually come into play. So here are some tips for that. So while we, when we actually observe, beyond the observation that we do when we talk to customers, we also have to be, like I said, I always think I'm like Sherlock Holmes and I want to find out cues about the customer, which he does not want to reveal. Therefore, I am the detective. So here are some practical tips from how to observe like Sherlock Holmes. I wanted to share this with you.
So anyways, let's get started with some tips on how to become more observant.
Number 1. Pay more attention to others than yourself. This is super important in observation because you're trying to observe the world and not yourself. So many people spend their days wondering what others think of them, if they will mess up in a conversation, or how they look. If you're actually trying to increase your observational skills, spend your energy and focus on others, not just yourself.
Alright guys, I know this one might be difficult, but as a great observer, you have to get great at noticing the world around you and not the world within you.
Instead of making a big deal out of the stain on your shirt, focus on how that man over there is crossing his arms. Instead of worrying what people think when you stutter, pay more attention to how that woman in your group blinks every time you say the word affair. Number 2. Notice changes.
So you should be observing for a period of time to set a baseline. This means you need to find out what is normal. And then you can compare future events back to the normal event to see what changes.
So tip number 2 is to notice changes. When you start observing, you can easily notice things out of place, but you should get a reference point first. Set a baseline for everything. How many times did that woman blink before you started talking about foreign affairs? What was that guy doing before he crossed his arms? Was this the first time he crossed them tonight? Or has he been doing it all night? Change is what is important, not just how someone acts. Remember in the video with psychological tips, how a great indicator of attraction it is if a lady is touching her lips when she's near you? Some women do this all the time, even when they're not around you, and this is why it's important to pay attention to change. Number 3. Put away distractions. To become a better observer, you must put away distractions. How can you notice subtle changes in body language or the size of someone's pupils if your phone has all your attention? There's all kinds of distractions in this noisy world, but if we can laser focus on something we're observing, you'll increase your chances of understanding the situation better.
You have to be really careful with where your attention is going. As an observer, it is your duty to make sure you're investing your attention wisely.
Laser-focused cognitive thinking requires dedication to the subject. You can't simply focus on 2 subjects and give 100% on both, so try to pick just one subject at a time while training. After you get better and put in plenty of hours of discrete observation, reading body language will become second nature, and it will be easy to focus on a whole room at once. Getting a feel for that creepy guy in the corner with a hidden gun will literally give you this gut instinct that he's tense. Also, putting away distractions gives you an empty mentality. What I mean by this is that your mind will be looking for something to do. It will eventually get bored. The brain's natural state is to wander. You can give it a purpose and start looking for changes. Start looking for things out of the ordinary. I actually like to make a game of it. Just like when you start to ride a motorcycle, you must consciously think about the steps to shift. Let go of throttle, pull in clutch, shift, let out clutch, give more throttle. It will eventually become an unconscious process. The same thing happens with observing others. You will develop a gut instinct about others, and this is your brain doing this, performing unconscious observations and judging automatically. Number 4. Watch a movie in another language without subtitles. There are a ton of them on Netflix. Just take the time and turn on one of those foreign films, but don't watch it for the storyline. Instead, pay super close attention to the body language of the characters. See if you can notice anything interesting in the background. Make it a game to come up with your own storyline while noticing the body language, tone of voice, and backgrounds of the characters. After a few movies you'll become a pro, and your observational skills will be much better. Number 5. Learn to link observations. Once you are able to make observations with little effort, you can go one step further and learn how to link these observations together to form a bigger picture. You can do this by reasoning backwards. Try and find a conclusion and think of what you could observe to know it.
Here's an example. If you notice that somebody has a stain on their shirt that looks like they were eating ice cream, and it's around 1 o'clock, right after most people get done eating lunch, you can come to the conclusion that maybe they had some ice cream for lunch.
Once you learn to think in this mindset, you can observe without the knowledge of the conclusion, and then that would become a deduction. So please, if you wish to know more on this topic,
So when you're observing, you found some tips here, right, to observe. Now, when we observe, we are looking at every aspect of the consumer's behavior. So it could be the self-image, the relationships, experience, institutional, environmental, all of that. So observation is about getting a complete picture of the customer and then trying to put it all together to get your insight. So it's about, it's really like a marriage when you're observing and interviewing. Everybody knows what it is. Everybody thinks that they can do it, but it is about understanding how to do it. So there are 8 different secrets that we talk about. The first is the importance of an introduction. When you're interviewing someone and when you start off, the respondent is not thinking about your product. They're thinking about you or something else that's happened in her or his life. And we need to, as moderators, be aware of how to manage it during the introduction and warm-up. So it's actually when you get into an interview setup with the customer, it's like a contract that you initiate. So there are a set of expectations that you have about the customer, and the customer has certain expectations about you, right? In terms of what they want, in terms of time or the responses. Some of them are nervous about what are they going to ask me, or there are so many emotions that range between, because they're 2 different strangers who are come together. So therefore, it helps. The introduction is a very important part of the interview because it helps manage or put at ease whether a stressed respondent or a difficult respondent. It's very important that we have a proper introduction to put them at ease. It gives permission to be to set the tone, to disagree, to be silly, or to be creative. So you kind of say what the whole session is going to be, and therefore, you kind of set the expectation at the start. You set out obligation to your partners in inquiry, and it basically helps set the rules between the respondent and the moderator. So that's the importance of the first part of an interview, which is the introduction. The second is observation, like we saw already, is a way of thinking and being. And when you are engaging with the customer, it's about having a non-directive approach. It's about being non-judgmental. It's about being unbiased. It's about being, not quick reactions to what they are saying. You watch and observe, and you probe in a way that allows the customer to open up. You're not asking in a very closed set of questions. This is not quantitative interviews. These are qualitative interviews. So it's open questions. It's about creating empathy. It's about active listening. It's allowing the respondent a space to reflect and tell them about their experience. So it is in this kind of a space that not only do you ask questions, it is in this kind of a space that you would use the projective techniques, because the respondent needs to be comfortable with who he is speaking to. Secret 3 is about eliciting information, which is not just about asking questions. So in qualitative, it's always about open questions. The questions are never closed. It allows the customer or the respondent to give a whole list of answers. And that's what projective techniques are also about, because it just allows them to think in a different way. It allows them to use their imagination, not just their rational mind. So when you ask a question, it's an open question, you listen to the answers, and then you build your question on that particular answer. So it's a whole process. The question is not one, it's many questions leading to a whole set of information. So that's why we have a discussion guide. We don't have a questionnaire, we have a discussion guide, which kind of builds upon the customer's responses. So open questions are questions like who, what, why, where, when, how, because they just leave the whole scenario open. So the customer can use any starting point to give the answers. Closed questions it typically starts with this, where it's of course easier to answer. It kind of gives a control to the questioner, but it actually restrains people. It closes people down. So while we ask a lot of questions, what the question leads to is very important, right? Because in qualitative, it's not just about getting a specific answer. You're asking one question, leading to another question, and then therefore getting a whole set of answers or the solution. So here is a good example that we got from, this is a case study that is Lincoln Memorial Coping Research. And this is a case study that was done in the US. And here is an interesting piece of information and how they went about the questions. So the problem was one of the monuments in Washington, D.C. is deteriorating. So the question is, why is the monument deteriorating? Because harsh chemicals are used frequently to clean the monument. Why are harsh chemicals needed? Because there are a lot of bird droppings on the monument and needs to be cleaned using harsh chemicals. Why are there a large number of bird droppings on the monument? Because a large population of spiders in around the monument are a source of food to the local birds. Why is there a large population of spiders in and around the monument? Because there's a vast swarm of insects on which spiders feed, which are drawn to the monument at dusk time. And the spiders feed on them, on the insects. And why are there swarms of insects? Because the lighting of the monument in the evening attracts the local insects. So the solution to the whole thing was to change how the lighting is done, and so that change how the monument is illuminated in the evening, and use whatever kind of bulbs to prevent the attraction of swarming insects, because it was killing a whole monument with all the chemicals that were used. So why am I showing you this kind of questioning? Because in qualitative, we use this whole technique called benefit laddering. And while the Lincoln Memorial questions was much easier, in benefit laddering, what we do is ask the question why from the start. Let's say the customer is talking of a good sole support in a shoe. Why is it important? And then you lead it up to a value. Now you can get the initial, you ask them, why do you need a good sole support? They'll say no pain or discomfort. That is kind of obvious, right? You can predict that. Then why is that important? Because I can exercise regularly. Yes, that's also easy to get. But why is exercise important? Better health, weight loss, all of that. Why is better health important? Looks good, get compliments. Now, when it comes to the higher order consequences like looking good or compliment, the customer is not able to answer it as easily as I have written it down here. So they take a while, they go roundabout, and then talk about why it's important for them to get compliments, or why it's important to, feel that I look good and I'm standing out in a group of others. So these kind of responses don't come out so easily. And when you probe them, you gently probe them to get these answers. And why is looking good important, or getting compliments important? It's high self-esteem. So if you ask a person directly, they're not going to answer this. They won't say, I want to feel, high on his self-esteem, therefore look good, or therefore I wear a good soul support. So we've come a long way from the soul to the mind, and actually it's a long journey. And this takes a lot of techniques and gentle probing. That's how you get the information from them. Of course, we've done a lot of studies, so we know what product attributes leads to what values. But if you are starting out, it doesn't come so obvious to you. So this is the whole benefit laddering theory. It's based on a theory where we take an attribute which leads to consequences and leads to a value at the end. And the values is what we are interested in. And therefore, to get these kind of responses, like I said, while it's easy and looks very simple, there's a lot of prompt and probes that you need to use to help achieve these kind of responses. So things like the prompts that we use in qualitative are, tell me more about, I wonder what this means, that's interesting, or just even a break or a pause or a silence helps customers to express their thoughts better, besides these pros, of course. Then, of course, in terms of deep diving, these are the set of questions that you could ask. If I could get inside your head, or who's responsible for this thought, or can we explore a little more? So that's how deep probing goes. Yes, it takes a lot of time. Okay. So that was on the kind of questions that you could ask. The secret for is, the more easier the interview looks, the more skill and concentration it requires. So when you're doing the interview with the customer, there's a whole lot of questions that you're asking. And like I showed you in the observation, the whole framework where we not only look at the person, we look at the environment, the attitude, the financial part, the environmental context, you're looking at the holistic. So you, as a moderator, when you're with the customer, you have to be thinking on all fronts simultaneously. So you have to kind of look at their body language, you have to look at the responses that they're saying, and then decide what to ask them. So there are multiple roles for an interviewer, and this kind of varies because there are different stages in the interaction. When you're setting off or starting an interview, there are different phases within the interview. So the typical stages are forming, storming, norming, performing, and mourning. So forming is the initial part where I did talk to you about how to set the whole expectation. So you kind of establish, we see ourselves as two people because there is a moderator, there is an interviewer. You see as, two individuals, and then the moderator has to take control in the situation, ask the question, gets the answer. So that's the storming part. The norming is when there is a certain, norms that are set in terms of language, behavior. Each of them try to manage or kind of mirror the other person's behavior or actions. So that happens in the norming stage. Then there is the performing stage where they have to prove themselves that, and there I'm giving my bit, therefore that whole performing focus comes in play. And then, of course, at the parting stage, it's a bit of mourning. Oh, I had a good session. And if it's a good session, and then, okay, I need to let go kind of thing. Yeah, because I have to go on to the next interview maybe. So any interaction has these different stages, and your role changes in each of these different stages. And when you are managing the respondent, it's about catching their attention with their using names, with hand gestures, with and about listening more actively, not talking more, giving them different ways of expression. So use various techniques and like projective techniques also, which I'll come to. And the secret five is that the discussion guides which we use are typically they are open-ended questions, and they are structured like a funnel. So you start with a broader issue because you can't start a conversation going very specific. So you start with a broader issue. You would look at the customer's introduction, different, like if you're focusing on fashion category, you'll understand about how they purchase products in terms, what is their sense of style, or what are the trends that they look for in the fashion industry, and then move on to the product, and then move on to the brand. So it's like a funnel where you start with generic information and then go very specific. And then the discussion guides are typically it's not linear. It covers various aspects. Therefore, it's like us touching on different points at different times. So they are like they don't have to follow a certain linear thing. It's about tackling different sets of information at the same time, but you have all those questions worked out. So there is the rational and the conscious. There is the emotional and intuitive in terms of getting information. There is the social part, the group behavior, and then there is the cultural. So in all interviews, we don't follow all of this, but a longish interview will ensure that we take care of all these different aspects of the respondent, so that we get a complete understanding of the respondent. And when we get into cultural, that's where, of course, it's like a longer session where you're looking at their values, the myths that they have, the rituals that they follow, understand what are the cultural impacts, given where they are staying, what kind of culture impacts on their behavior. And those are not questions you can directly ask to the consumer about how does culture impact you. It's about observing and trying to get a sense of how they do different activities or how they lead their lives on a day-to-day basis, and therefore you infer what the cultural understanding is, because culture is not something that you can really ask and get. It's something that you observe. And then we come on to projective techniques, which are powerful tools, and they're not really games, or they are tools to unearth deeper emotional part of the consumer. So there's both projective and enabling techniques. So why do we need these techniques? There are certain things that the customer will say and which they can't say. So you have on the vertical axis what they can say and what they can't say. And there's also the whole thing about, I will say this, but I will not say that. So in the customer's mind, they are also thinking like this. So what they can say and will say, you can ask and they will tell you. All the logical questions come out immediately. You ask and they'll give you what's your name, what's your age, all of that. What you will say but can't say, which you are not able to express, something like a value, something like a cultural impact on your behavior. All of these things cannot be, it's very difficult for the customer to say or express that. And there you need to facilitate the whole telling part. And can say and won't say. There are times when customers, withdraws and does not answer. So then you kind of coax them. They know they can say it, but they don't want to say it. So you kind of persuade them to tell. And sometimes they tell, sometimes they don't. Can't say and won't say, there's a whole, subconscious that we can't deal with at all. So that kind of left quiet. So this is why we use projective techniques to help customers facilitate their whole expressive behavior. So it's an opportunity for customers to project their own thoughts and feelings onto something to make it safer and comfortable to reveal their feelings. So you're using an image, a word, a certain other technique so that they can project it on their thoughts and feelings on that. Enabling techniques, on the other hand, is just to help them articulate or understand their own feelings better or bring them to the surface. So you kind of give cues and, help them, like, showing a product stimulus. It just enables them to answer. Whereas a projective, they have to think a little more, they have to imagine a little more and then draw the answer. So let me give you some examples of the projective techniques that we use. And reasons to use is to understand, you can use it in all of these different situations. One is to understand context, behavior, decision-making, or how people connect and classify. So that's when you use, when you want to explore brands. Of course, projective techniques are used a lot for branding and other kind of related sessions, and exploring emotional and personal, feelings about each individual. And it's also a way to make the interviews richer, because if you were to just ask them questions, I'm sure after 15 minutes, the customer will walk away or the respondent will walk away. But when you introduce different techniques, it keeps them interested and it helps them not just facilitate telling, but it keeps the whole discussion alive and more interesting. So enabling techniques are associations where, and this is the first thing that in any qualitative interview, the first thing you would ask is, okay, what comes to your mind spontaneously? What thoughts, feelings, moods, textures? You can ask it in different ways on all the different senses, touch, taste, sense of smell, hearing, all of that. What are the association? So this, when you ask a simple thing like an association, as people, we are always doing association. So therefore, it becomes very simple for them to answer. When you think about yourself, the minute you see something, you're quickly associating it with various other things. You don't see it in isolation, right? You always say, okay, this one looks like what I bought long back, or this looks like what my sister got, or this looks like fun, this looks like terrible. So there are different associations that you spontaneously make. And that's the first thing you would ask your respondent, because it's so easy for them to answer. Then comes the more difficult one, whereas fantasies, where you ask them to role play and tell them, okay, imagine you were a princess, you were a queen, then what would you do? So you give them roles to play and ask them to do fantasize about themselves in certain situations. It depends on the objectives. It depends on what you want, what information you want from the customers. Then allegories, where you're using metaphors to express emotions. So not all of us are that skilled that we speak using metaphors. So it's important to introduce metaphors like as thin as ice, or as cold as snow, or those are the very simple metaphors. But the classic metaphor is Apple symbol, which is your, the brand logo, which is a symbol of, symbol of disruption, innovation, which is what Apple has created, but it's actually an Adam and Evil temptation kind of symbol. So using metaphors to help them express. So very often customers don't think of metaphors themselves. So we actually, as moderators, we prepare what kind of metaphors to use, and we introduce it to the respondent so that they can build upon it. So that's how we use metaphors. Projections is about, getting to know their a little more on the unconscious, thoughts or the personalities of the respondents. So this is the, when they are identifying with an image or with another character and they're able to respond. So projective techniques, we all know, is based on psychological theories. It's the phenomena of projection. It is an unstructured stimuli provided to the subject to ask structure so that they can respond. In doing so, they actually express their own fears, desires, hopes, aspirations, all of that. And a classic projective technique is the Rorschach in block test, which of course we don't use at all now, but we use variations of this. So projective techniques are metaphorical, elicitation, association. These are all the different techniques that we use. And the method is given on the right side, which is personification for metaphorical, psychodrawing for elicitation, association. So I'll just take you through some of these in the coming slides, so it gives you a little more clarity. So personification, everyone uses it widely. So imagine, Amazon as a person, or imagine Apple as a person. So that's pretty prevalently used these days, and it's very powerful when we use for brands. So when you ask consumers to personify the brand, you get a sense of how they actually relate to the brand. So here is a good example of how Lazada was viewed in the Philippines and Thailand versus in the Vietnam and Indonesia. Look at the kind of personality difference that come across. If we had to ask this in words, they could have never answered that. But here you see someone very slick and very smart, and then you have someone who's very down to earth, very kind of middle class, very kind of someone you can approach, but not that street smart. So you get the nuances of the person when they are actually using these images to express them, express what they're thinking about the brand. So you get those nuances here. So the guy on the right is more trustworthy, poor in communication, not up to date, whereas in the guy on the left is very cool. He's a rich-looking, smooth skin, coat and tie. So those kind of nuances is what you get in personification. Of course, you also need to be looking at the descriptors carefully to get a good interpretation. This is another example of personification. So typically when we ask people to personify, there's this whole process. So we start with personification. We tell them, we tell customers, give us the age, college student, working, this, that. Then personality, then how is he with others? Does he interact with you? Does he not interact with you? Where does he stay? In a posh area, not in a posh area? So all those, we are building this whole person, kind of in a full picture. And then we take them through different stages of life, and you'll see that. I'll come to that, because we also take them through, what is the relationship you form? What if you were to die? So those kind of questions also form. But before that, while we do personification, another interesting projective technique is, projecting it to another object, not just human being. So imagine you were a smart car. What would you, what kind of a smart car would you be? So it helps them get those different, nuances that otherwise you wouldn't get. Would you be a very colorful versus gray car? What kind of speed? What kind of, the differences between the two smart car, which I can't read too well in terms of, like I could read the differences between the person, but not these two cars. But it does say something about the brand when you take these two different types of cars. They're both sports cars, but they're pretty different. There are a lot of dimensions that are different. So we will analyze and kind of understand what these dimensions are. So basically, you're asking them to be a smart car and see, what kind of a smart car comes up. Or we do psychodrawing, where you get respondents to draw out their ideas. So imagine you are playing a game in the countryside. What elements would you include? So when you're looking at a broad-based study, where you're not just focused on the product, and you want to understand the entire context of the consumer, then you use a psychodrawing where they will add different elements that are important in their lives. They're actually drawing it. Works very well when in children's groups or young adult group. Of course, the older group tend not to draw as much because they say, oh, I'm not so good in drawing, or there's a little inhibition that comes in, but works very well if you're working with children. Role playing. Role playing, you can ask it. In fact, we use less of this, but it's it is very helpful when, be it any product category that you're talking about. Let's say you ask a question like, if you were a fashion designer, what kind of changes would you make on this phone, as compared to if you were a technology person, or if you were somebody else, right? What kind of changes would you make? If you were a school going child, how would you create an app for shopping online? If you were a housewife, how would you create an app, as compared to if you were a young 30-year-old IT geek, how would you create an app for shopping online? So it's very different. What you get out of this is what is relevant, or what are the barriers, limitation of that particular person, whether housewife or child or adult with certain limitations. You get to see what actually limits them and what actually enables them. And that helps you, build a product, or used a lot for products. So it helps you get a better picture of the product. Obituary. When I talked about personification, so what we typically do is, once we get this person in mind, say a 23-year-old, good looking, whatever, whatever kind of a person comes, which the customer creates, then you tell them, okay, who is this person in your life? Is he your brother, your sister, your son, your neighbor, or just a handsome dude on the road? Or is he your boss? You try and get who form a relationship between the person and your, the customer. So they're able to relate. And when they give a relationship, when they name a relationship to that person, there's a whole lot of nuances that come up. Because if that person is my son versus the person is a stranger, there's a lot of, you can infer how they interact with the brand. To what extent is the relationship with the brand close? To what extent are they drawing inspiration from the brand? Or to what extent is the brand a part of their lives? So you're able to get a sense of the brand's role in their lives when you give a relationship to that person. So you've got personification, then you've got relationship. Then you do obituary, which is this. Imagine that person died. Imagine Google, whose personification you did, he died. What would you write in the obituary? So would you write that you miss him a lot? Would you write about his strengths? Would you write about his weakness? So all those little nuances keep coming up when you write an obituary. And you don't stop at obituary. After obituary, you say, okay, what if this person came back, was reincarnated as a person, another person? What kind of a person would he be? So you're actually taking this whole personification to in human terms and trying to get different dimensions of the person through all of these questions. And believe me, you get a lot when you do this. It's very effective in branding, maybe not so much in other areas of research, but very good with branding. So obituary, reincarnation, you finish all of that with, that's a whole set of technique. This is another technique, the balloon technique, which is, it's more like a sacrificial concept, what they call, where here you have a hot air balloon, it's going to burst or whatever going to happen now, it's going to crash. Who will you keep back? There are 4 or 5 people. There is brand A, B, C, D, and which brand will you save? Which brand will you allow them to die? So here is technique which helps you to understand not just relationship with the brand, but relationship in comparison with the other brands. Then, of course, my favorite is using pictures. looking. So when you talk to customers, you ask them to pick up pictures, and we always have a library of pictures which we typically use. We kind of customize it for different projects, and we just spread out those pictures, and we tell them to pick pictures on what the brand represents on or what the brand is not. Very important to ask what the brand is and what the brand is not. This is one of the fundamental principles of semiotics also. And when we put together all the pictures that a customer chooses to represent a brand or an idea or a profile of a customer, whatever object you're testing, you get various nuances through these pictures. So here, some of the inferences we drew was about perfectionist, well-equipped and ready to take charge because of the keenness with which they're looking, the whole posture that they're having while doing a certain task signifies variety. So these were the nuances that we got using the pictures. Then here is, brand world, when we talk about what pictures would you choose to represent a brand. Here is a dynamic, vibrant brand with a lot of colors, movement, all of that. So pictures are very easily used, but you have to be careful about the pictures you show the customers and also how you interpret them while you're using it for your research. And this is the one which came up for sophistication, classy, premium, very obviously sophistication, premium, all of that. But when you compare two brands on sophistication and you have one set of visuals for one brand and another set of visuals for another brand, you'll see the differences and how the nuances emerge when you actually compare. Okay, let's quickly look at enabling, or because we are quite way off time. Sorry. So enabling techniques is about associations, which I already discussed, and grouping. Grouping is putting together different, different products together, different thoughts together. It could be anything. So just an example, as you can see on the collage board. Brand association, while it seems so simple, you can use this association to almost get the entire perspective on the brand. So you not just get about the values, you get about the sensorials, you get about packaging, you can, the entire association can be collected for a brand in its entirety. But you have to do it over a certain amount of time and, probe in different ways so that you get all the answers. And good research, of course, finally to close, is also about the analysis and interpretation, which I'll just quickly look at. It's about gathering all the data, and you use all of these different techniques to gather data. And before you gathered the data, you also looked at, we also looked at how to observe and collect data, right? We spent a good enough time to do that. Then the key thing is to sort, label the data, get interpretation out of them, create the connection, and then build the story. So that's a whole process of the analysis and interpretation. So while it looks simple and in different layers, it does take a lot of time. So you're taking the whole set of answers, you're grouping them, you're finding themes, and you're building a story. So that's how the whole interpretation happens. And when you use all of these techniques, you don't use them in isolation. You use different techniques to get your answers. So you get all the information from the different techniques that you got, build a theme, and then you build the story. And very important, when you're building these themes, you're getting the context around it, because the context is what drives behavior, we all know. So very important to look at the context, whether it's in terms of time, environment, activities, all of that. So that's how we finally put together all the information that is collected and build the story for that research project. So any thoughts, any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Jaisy. As of now, I think no questions. Let me see if anyone please, if you have any questions, please put it in the chat. Just to
I
let you know that there were about, I think, 40 to 45 people who joined through the Zoom, but there's about 120, 25 people who joined through the live stream, and it's actually is still there, which is fantastic because we've run over time. So, yeah, any questions? Or else, since we have already run over time, I think we can end it soon. Okay. Any questions or? Okay. Okay, so we're just getting thank you messages. Thanks, Jaisy. Thanks. This is wonderful. It's always wonderful to hear from you, actually, all your sessions.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
And we will be posting the video recording in YouTube and also in LinkedIn. And for Lizardians, it will also be in our Laz Research Insights group. And if you want to listen to more such sharings, which we call the brain food sharings, you can always just scan this QR code and you will be taken to the Eventbrite notifications, and you will be able to get all the okay, what's the YouTube link? I will be posting it soon, or Harris will be posting it, so you will be able to get the link over there if just in case you are there, or you can also, if you're following Jaisy, you can also get it over there. So yeah, I don't know if I can post it right now. Let me check and send it to you. Okay, I got it. So let me just post it here. Yeah, so that's the YouTube link. So you can follow this. So we go on posting all our training videos in YouTube and also on LinkedIn. And every Wednesday, 3 p.m. Singapore time, we do these sharings from different experts, industry experts. So yeah, you will be able to see more of these sharings coming soon. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Jaisy. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.